Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for April 16th. Today I want to take a look at Joe Biden presidency, what that's going to look like. There have been, I know Cash Peters has done several readings on Biden, and he always sees like a very, very difficult road ahead for him. I know some of my viewers have been talking about other readers, and they're talking about Joe Kennedy sort of stepping up. There's still sort of that lingering hope that somehow Como is going to, I don't know, contest the nomination or whatever they do, and try to step in. And Como is not. He has his hands full, and he's very, very focused and dedicated on New York and trying to get that state whole and healthy. And he would not walk away in the middle of this. And, that's the other thing we have to really, really remember and take into consideration. I think people are starting to believe, or they think, that when Trump is out of the White House, everything is just going to be fine. It's not going to be just fine because you're still, several more months, if not a year, away from a vaccine for this virus. And so until that happens, not just the United States, but the world is going to be living in a sort of restricted environment. It's going to be a time of great difficulty. And frankly, I think you have to give credit to any elected official who willingly chooses to step into this situation, knowing that they have a brutally difficult road ahead of them. So, and I have always said that I see Joe Biden for president. I see him lasting for 4 years. I see a female vice president. I see that vice president being Black, most likely. And I see ultimately her being, but in the next election, sort of becoming president. Let me say it that way. But having said all of that, I just thought that maybe it would be a good time for me to actually drill down on Biden and see if we can figure out kind of what the energies are around him and what the future sort of looks like for him. So come on down, because that's my question. There we go. Okay, so Biden present, future, Biden present, future, Biden present, future. So let's just see what we can see. Tell me about Joe Biden. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still getting a definite yes that he is going to win the presidency. And as time goes by, energetically, it's feeling more and more like Trump may very well leave. And again, July really seems to be talking to me, although, again, I don't have a lot of clarity on that. And this is the thing, right? I mean, I've lost track of the number of readers, whether they were astrologers or tarot card readers or any other kind, who uniformly kept saying March was going to be really, really bad for Trump. It wasn't going to go well for him. And of course, we have seen exactly that. But there was never any real clarity about why it was going to go bad, just this intense sort of feeling of foreboding. And I am feeling that same sort of energy around July, where you can't quite figure out what's going to happen. You just know that there's going to be sort of like this seismic shift that takes place. And that is becoming, it's just feeling stronger and stronger. So that's going to be really fascinating to watch that unfold and see how that energy plays out. As far as Biden goes, I really do see him, getting the presidency. But this is the thing, okay? His election is going to create a change of fortune for the better for the country. And the actions, the things he chooses to do, are going to create some forward movement in terms of healing and correction. But it would be a mistake to think that things are just magically going to be better when he assumes office, because it's feeling very much like he's going to be making some very weighty decisions that have serious implications and consequences, not only as he is sort of putting together that transition, okay, when he's thinking about who does he want for, his secretaries of whatever, state, justice, whatever. So there's a lot of really heavy decisions that he's making. And it feels very much as if this is in some ways really, really a group effort. He is so aware of everything that the country has lost. In some ways, it's like an even, I want worse version of what Obama inherited. So the market, there was that big crash kind of between the time, if I remember correctly, between the time Obama was elected and the time he took office. And so that really defined the first short period of his presidency, and in many ways got people very angry with him, or very supportive of him. And in some ways, it's the same thing with Biden, is he really is jumping into a situation really mid-disaster. And so he is incredibly aware of the fact that the team that he puts around him is paramount. And so the decisions he's making are heavy. He feels the burden of them. And he knows that this isn't a one-man job. Of course, he always knew that, unlike the current resident of the White House. And there is a lot of assessment going on. There's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of it's really, because this is the picture I just got. So like a big whiteboard, right? And a whole bunch of pictures running along the top of the whiteboard of different Democrats, different power brokers within the U.S. government, okay? And almost like a chart, right? And they're sort of taking a name and then they're moving it to a place, and then they're taking another one, moving it there, and then they're moving these guys, and then so there's a lot. Nothing is kind of set in concrete yet. There's a great deal of assessment going on, a great deal of discussion going on. There is a great deal of trying to figure out the most powerful and best equipped people to slot into certain positions so that the maximum amount of damage control can be done quickly and efficiently. And a lot of it is going to have to do with literally reestablishing laws, getting the mindset back to a place where breaking the law, blatantly being corrupt, blatantly being dishonest is really, really going to be paramount. It's going to be really important to sort of get people almost like retrained, if you will, from this sort of lawless period that has been going on in the United States for the last, 3 or 4 years. there's a lot to do. And, usually this card talks about money or possessions, that kind of thing. But I'm reading this more as with the generational component to it. So he is going to surround himself with various generations of ideas, of experiences, of ability. So you are going to see a really broad cross section of people that he invites to the presidency, if you will. It reminds me, I think it was the first time that Trudeau was elected, and there were an equal number, or very close to equal number of females in his cabinet. And reporters sort of said to him, why would you do that? Or why did you do that? And his answer, if I'm not mistaken, was, because it's time. And there's going to be that very same attitude with Biden. It's simply time. It's time to expand the diversity. It's time to expand the voices. It's time to expand the input and the energy. And so that also is a really good thing. And, I think that that's part of the reason why there is that sort of sense that there are going to be these other people who come in and play really, really significant roles within his administration. And it's going to be fascinating to watch that process unfold, because there are really so many brilliant people out there. I think it was in, I don't know, it was a video this week where I talked about the fact that I'm starting to energetically see Nancy Yates stepping in as the Attorney General of the United States. So, and I mean, really, a brilliant, brilliant choice. Somebody who has been a little bit off the radar lately, and so her name doesn't quickly spring to mind, but within Democratic circles, her name has not slid off the radar, okay? And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where there are so many more names floating around, and it's not a matter of narrowing that down as much as it's a matter of expanding it and trying to figure out how to get the maximum number of people into key positions. And there's going to be really smart people heading up a new Corona task force. There's going to be really smart and clever people figuring out how to relaunch the economy without damaging the people. Okay, like there's going to be all kinds of new ways to look at situations, and in part that is because while Joe Biden has the experience, and that is fundamental at this point in time, he has the know-how, he has the law. And so interesting that I'm showing the Ace of Swords, which I'm representing as him as sort of leader, and the Queen of Swords, which would be his mate. So I'm now going to say that the Ace of Swords going forward is most likely to represent Joe Biden at this time, and the Queen of Swords is most likely representative of the vice presidency. Okay, so what is with this Eight of Swords sitting here? Well, and frankly, you've also got the Nine of Swords here. So, these are cards that one needs to, sort of figure out what the story is there. This is about worry. This is about strategy. And this is about really feeling as if And it's as if they're going to try to figure out a way to balance so that you have the best of tradition with the very best of new blood, new energy, new thoughts. And the idea is for the Biden administration, their job or their function, it looks as if, feels as if it's going to be creating this really strong coalition going forward. Because once they actually get in there and they're actually able to look at all the stuff that went on behind the scenes, there is really, really going to be a sense that this is such a huge mess to clean up that this can't be done in 4 years, okay? And so the idea is to start creating really, really strong coalitions, not only within the sort of White House ball, but also with governors, with mayors, states. Like, it's like they're going to try to bring all of these pieces that have frayed back together so that there is longevity, and so that the things that they are correcting and working very hard to put back into place and position are really, really going to be able to be solid, and they're not going to be able to be broken apart and destroyed by another Trump-like personality. Okay. So that's kind of the energy, and he's going to take a lot of slings and arrows. Not everybody loves him. He's going to have a hard time, bringing over some of the Bernie supporters. Although Bernie has very generously and in a really classy way has endorsed Biden. And make no mistake, Bernie is going to play a significant role going forward. He is not going to quietly go away. And so the people who really love Bernie and are not so thrilled about Biden, I take comfort from the fact that Bernie is going to play a significant role going forward. And between the two of them, they're going to be able to figure out a way to sort of almost like bring the two philosophies, if you will, together. It is not going to be snap your fingers and it's all overnight done. But there is going to be a systematic progression to literally bring to a stop some of the attitudes and behaviors that really, really created an environment where Americans were left out in the cold. Because when this pandemic hit, right, the things that were not put in place, the stuff that they discovered was needed. And one of the big things that they discovered was that when you have a country where capitalism is God, and you have institutions that really are about the quality and the care of people's lives, and they are running in sort of a for-profit mentality, that is where, when something like this happens, things just frankly fall right apart. Okay, and so those are going to be kind of the big things that they're going to be looking at. So don't for a second think that Bernie doesn't have a really important role to play and significant contributions, because he does and he will. What you're seeing, that sort of communications that you see kind of going back and forth between Bernie and Joe, that is not political theater. That is actually a very clear understanding by, honestly, two old white men who have been around the block 100 times, who understand with great clarity what is needed in this moment. And while they may come at it from slightly different angles, they will end up very clearly meeting in the center. And that's part of what creates the change in fortunes. Okay, so for those of you who are not hot on Biden, maybe that perhaps might give you a little bit more reassurance. There's a lot of work for Biden to do to really, see, this is the thing. He can't just win the presidency. The Republican Party has to be annihilated, because without that, you're going to get this constant murmuring and static nonsense going on in the background. It's going to be that attitude of, well, whatever I can do to destroy what they're trying to do, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, literally, think about a bunch of Republicans running around being like Mark Meadow and Rand Paul clones. And what's that coach's name, that guy who never wears a jacket? Never mind. You all know who I'm talking about. Jim Jordan. So the idea is, it's not just to win, it is to annihilate as much as possible, so that the movement forward cannot be like really obstructed. And in time, there will be more of a balance. But right now, there really feels like it's a need for Joe to get the people around him who everybody is going to support, vast numbers of people, so that they can really, really push out this ultra conservative agenda. And part of the reason that you want that annihilation is because the Democrats learned a very very difficult lesson about ignoring those crazy right-wingers and just, they're fools. They're never going to overturn this. They're never going to do that. And guess what? Over a period of time, that is exactly what Mitch McConnell and his party were able to do. It took them years and years, but they were really good at playing the long game. And that is only a part of the mess that now has to be cleaned up. Because on top of all of the other messes that Trump created, the pandemic has just amplified all of it. Ultimately, that's going to be what brings Trump down, okay? It is going to be people starting to see things from a different perspective. Not only the people who watch my channel and others who have seen with very clear eyes for a very long time, but those whose eyes were maybe a little clouded, that maybe felt that they didn't have they couldn't see clearly. They had nowhere to maneuver. Even though Trump's policies were destroying their livelihood, they didn't see a way forward because they were so stuck in political rhetoric and dogma. Those people also are going to need to they're going to start to need to shift their attitudes, because you don't want a divided country, right? You want one that sort of hangs together so that there is a way better balance. And one of the things that's going to be really important is creating that balance again between sort of the haves and the have-nots. It's going to be about shifting the attention away from the almighty dollar and moving it into that we versus me attitude. God, I wish somebody would create that as a slogan. It's just a brilliant phrase because it encapsulates everything in 3 words. So there's going to be a big balancing act, okay? Right now, he's got people behind the scenes who are helping him strategize. Obama has, of course, endorsed him, and that's not a big surprise to anybody. But again, there are levers of power working in the background. So sometimes it feels, you kind of energetically get the feeling that in some ways, Biden might end up being, what's the word I'm looking for? The front man, okay? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, he is going to be the face that is able to start making the corrections, because there is that sense of respectability. There is that sense of wisdom, that the experience, okay? And certainly allies around the world know and trust and like him, and that's huge. behind the scenes, there is going to be huge networks of really, really smart, clever people doing a lot of the hard work. So as I've said before, not only is it vital that Biden has a really sort of young and vibrant and energetic and really like wow personality vice president, he honestly is going to have that all the way through his his secretaries, all the way through his administration. There's going to be huge amounts of political savvy and power come to bear literally behind the guy because he's elderly. Bless his soul. He's just elderly and he's exhausted. And I'm not even convinced that if this situation had not been so horrendous with Trump, that he even would have really entertained returning to politics. But at this point, it feels very much as if um, this is like a call to duty for him. And so he's very mindful of the fact that he needs strong people behind him. And again, really cool picture they just gave me. So, like when people perform like singers, right? And they're up on stage and the older they get, kind of the bigger and the louder the backup singers get. And all of a sudden it's that backup singer who's hitting those really high notes or those really suspended notes, because the performer in front recognizes that they have lost some of their power simply as the years have gone by. And so the way they compensate for that is they get this really powerful backup behind them. And that is exactly what is going on with the Biden camp. So sometimes I think that's where, there is this impression out there that in some ways he's sort of going to be a paper tiger, right? But it's about wisdom. It's about understanding your strengths and understanding where you can let other people really blossom into their strengths. And unlike Trump, a smart leader understands that those powerful people that work with you and sort of behind the scenes, they are your strength. They don't diminish you. They enhance you. And so that very much is sort of looking like exactly what we're going to see going forward. And, again, beautiful cards here, right? You've got emotions settling down. You've got taking emotions that are out of control, that are all over the map, that are fearful and scared and panic. And there's going to be a gentling or a calming. There's going to be a reduction of that, the anger and the resentment. And there's going to be an awareness that going forward, governments are not reverting back to the way it was. In order to survive in the new world, they really are going to have new strategies. And that is not only about the new world in terms of politics and all governments all over the world having this massive mess to clean up, but it's more than that. It is about the vibrational shift that is taking place. It is about the consciousness and the energy shifting so that people are simply in a more enlightened place. That is going to be part of what helps steer not only your country, but all countries out of the very difficult place they're in right now. And not only does he have part of what it takes to make that happen, but he's very wisely going to be putting people in place who have the skill sets to really not only support him, but really come into their own power and their own strengths and be able to create an environment where the growth moves forward and the destruction starts to be minimized and corrected. It's a huge job, people. It's massive. He is going to be the voice of many. His voice, his words are going to be exactly what people want and need to hear. He is what will heal the country, but he ain't doing it single-handedly, folks. There are so many people behind him, and that's what's going to bring out the sun. And again, here's another, this is again a perfect example of what I'm talking about. He's kind of the wounded hero, right? I mean, he's got a lot going on, but look at what stands behind him. These wands are not imprisoning him. They are supporting him. It's going to be a big lift, people. It's not going to be easy. And there has been so much lying going on. It's not even funny. And speaking of lying, I really do want to just take a moment to remind people that, what's that expression about idle hands and the devil's work or something? So this is the time where Putin, China, are really, really busy flooding the internet, flooding, the world with garbage information, misinformation, flat out lies. And you need, again, to be extra, extra careful and practice more judgment. Don't just buy into something, particularly if it really scares you, because understand, if it really scares you, it has been designed to elicit that fear in you. Because the more frightened you are, the less logical you are, the less clearly you see things. So when they invoke in you a fear response, it is then very easy for them to get you to absorb whatever crap follows because you're not thinking as clearly. And I've done several readings on Biden. I've looked into this in some sort of from several different ways. I am not seeing any, I don't want to use the word merit, but I will say I'm not getting any sort of significant pushback or negative, not pushback's not the right word, sort of any negative results of some of the implications out there that perhaps he is a little too forward, he is a little bit too touchy-feely. And again, I make no excuses, and the Me Too movement is brilliant, et cetera, et cetera. I completely support that. But there does come a time where you have to take a look at sort of the environment people were raised in. And for any of you who have clear memories of grandfathers or grandmothers, or indeed some of you may still have them on the planet, if you put what they said up against the current political environment, the things they said and did wouldn't fly either, right? I mean, so you have to take into consideration, not that you excuse it, but that you understand that the intent is not sort of malicious or, dirty, just for lack of a better word, okay? And for older people, it is a real learning curve to sort of get in with the politically woke behavior, okay? Again, so I'm just not seeing whatever allegations come out, I'm just not seeing them carrying a great deal of weight, in part, sadly, but in part because the need of many is so paramount. And he, with his team, it appears, are really going to be able to get that ball rolling and start healing what desperately, desperately needs to be healed in your country. So that's my look at Joe Biden. I don't know how much that fits or doesn't fit with what other people are saying. This is my take based on the energy that I'm receiving and my interpretation of that energy. So, for now, thank you for joining me. Take care, be well, and I'll see you soon. Stay safe.